Welcome to the 50th anniversary of the International Hydrofoils Society. The last celebration like this was in 1995 and was hosted by John Meyer during his 24 years as IHS president. When it was first proposed that we commemorate this milestone, we thought it natural to follow the previous plan. The 25th anniversary celebration was held in Washington, D.C. The program was centered around a presentation of formal academic papers. And the event was opened by Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, the former Chief of Naval Operations. Some consider him to be the father of the U.S. Navy hydrofoil program. We plan to relocate to the USS Ares Hydrofoil Museum in Gasconade, Missouri for our celebration. However, COVID-19 changed our plans, and we began to realize the benefits of having a virtual conference which is not only virus-free, but allows individuals from all over the world to actively join in. For instance, we have Teoko from Japan, and well, later we'll have others introduce themselves. Kai, it looks like he may be from someplace in the east. Martinn Mandles, he's all the way from Los Angeles, so we're widely covered here. After much discussion, it was decided that we would have a three-pronged approach. First, we would publish videos. Now we have 23 of these videos published on YouTube that you can see anytime. And our YouTube channel is named Hydrofoils, and you can tune into those. They're up there. Second, we have live presentations, which we'll be doing today, and that extends over a 4-week period. Third, we will be recording the live conferences, and we'll be posting them to YouTube along with the previously posted videos. Okay, so what's so special about hydrofoils that keeps us fascinated after 50 years? In 1970, the military planned to build 35 foil-borne ships, and by 1993, 23 years later, the U.S. Navy unceremoniously decommissioned all 25 of the remaining hydrofoil craft. This led many to believe the idea had become out of date. However, since then, the Russians, Italians, and Boeing have produced many passenger-carrying hydrofoils, many of which are in service today. Then came a wave of personal hydrofoils. Today, this movement is led by the America's Cup team, which regularly sails at 50 miles an hour, well above the wind speed. There are also many smaller classes of hydrofoil sailboats that are being used today around the world for pleasure and competition. Today, when visiting most surfside, you will see hydrofoil surfboards, with some of them being powered by electric motors, allowing them to glide effortlessly over the water. Even human-powered foils are popular. Sophisticated motor-powered runabouts with submerged hydrofoils like Harry Larson's Talaria 4 and the Swedish Candela are proof of continuing excitement about hydrofoils. Some of us predict a resurgence. There are newer, stronger, lightweight materials like carbon-reinforced resins and new metal alloys. Compact, powerful electric motors combined with lighter, stronger batteries tease the imagination. Automated control systems consisting of strong, compact digital computers with power unimagined in the days of the PHM, PCH, and the PGH class boats. And exclusively for the military, lighter, compact weapon systems like the Gatling gun and the shipboard missiles scream, "Take another look at me, military, I'm ready to fight." Recognizing such an exciting future, let's talk to today's forward thinkers. The first of which are Neil Baird and Paul Bieker. Before I turn the mic over to Bill Hochberger and Neil and Paul, here are the rules. All questions will be presented after the speaker concludes, not during, please. The microphones of most in the audience will be muted to reduce background sounds. To be recognized as a questionnaire, raise your hand in front of the camera and wave it around a little bit. Finally, thank you, International Hydrofoils Society's 50th Anniversary Committee members, for your many hours of hard work in preparing for this celebration. In particular, thank you, Vice President Mark Bieber, Veteran Society member Bill Hochberger, hard-working Australian Martin Grimm, Treasurer Roger Schaefer, Webmaster Scott Wadle, and 4 heavy lifters, Harry Larson, Richard Steed, Stan Siegel, and Joel Billingsley. And above all, let us join in thanking Martin and Connie Mandles, who are here today, for creating and maintaining the Mandles Prize for Hydrofoil Excellence, which we've given to many students over the last, what would it be, 5 or 6 years. I'm now turning the host control over to Bill Hochberger, who is going to repeat a role similarly played in 1995, 25 years ago, on our 25th anniversary. You've got the controls, Bill, and thanks to everybody. Good luck, and we'll talk to you all later.
You'll see from the next slide who I am. I first of all must say how delighted and honoured I am to have been invited to give the keynote address to this amazing conference and celebration, which represents so much work and so much coordination. And I note difficulty because of all the organising committee being at least as old as me, except for Martin Grimm, I think. And I guess most of us have resorted to children and grandchildren for assistance with the technology. But we're here and it's up and running, and I would like to thank you all again first for inviting me and congratulate you for putting this together. I'm sure it'll be very important. So I, many years ago, in fact 42 years ago, started what has now become Baird Maritime with my wife Rose. It's an international maritime publishing and exhibition company, and it came out of my background as a ship and boat obsessive. I've always been fascinated by boats ever since I can remember, and I've had boats since I was 8 years old and mucked around on them before that, so they've always interested me. But the good thing about my job over the last, well, more than 40 years before I started the business, was that I've had experience with an endless supply of different kinds of ships and boats in all parts of the world. And I've experienced them, studied them, owned some, and it's given me, I think, a unique perspective worldwide to know a bit about what's happening. And in addition to that, as a teenager, I actually experimented with, studied and worked on hydrofoil craft, and I've traveled on many around the world. So I go back actually more than 50 years. It's about 58 years since I first started fiddling with hydrofoils. So, as I said, a fascination with foiling, and I guess we all share that. But in the early 60s, my father and I built a 6 metre by 3 metre Atunga class plywood catamaran. It was a really lovely boat, very fast, and we still hold a couple of records in Tasmania for regattas there. Once it got up and going, it was amazingly fast. But all through the period of building and then sailing that boat, I became intrigued with hydrofoiling. And I read a lot of the literature from the Amateur Yacht Research Society, who seem to be the world leaders on certainly sailing hydrofoiling. I also saw the inevitable Mechanics Illustrated and similar magazines from America about what was happening there and in Russia. And I started experimenting with various foils, basically dagger boards, but we kept changing the shapes and the sizes and all sorts of things. And we actually did get the boat to lift occasionally, so we could see light under the lee hull. Mostly we broke the dagger boards. We went through a succession of them, but bear in mind they were all wood, sometimes reinforced with fiberglass, but mostly plain wood. We thought about aluminium, but it was going to be too heavy and too difficult to work, and we thought it'd probably bend once we got up when we put the weight on it. So we stuck with wood, and some of them worked, and we went for some amazing runs a few times when it actually got up. Now, I must add, my naval architect son tells me it's impossible, but naval architects have told me a number of things are impossible over the years, and I know from my own experience it was possible. It did work. So that got me interested. I kept reading AYRS journals, and I then ultimately went to Sydney numerous times for sailing, and saw the early Supramar PT20 hydrofoils that were working for as Manly Ferry, and every chance I got I went for a ride on them, even though as a poor student it was fairly expensive. But I did travel on them when I could, and I became increasingly enthused by the whole concept over that period, and got more so once the larger Rodriguez PT50s were introduced. They were thundering impressive machines, and they certainly cut the time from Circular Quay in Sydney to Manly by about 50% over the traditional Manly ferries, which I think at that stage was still steam powered. So it was an exciting time, and I kind of fell in love with hydrofoils at that stage. That worked. I'm trying to get onto the next slide, and something's going wrong here. There we are. We saw, following the Rodriguez boats, the development of the Boeing Jetfoils out of the US Navy craft that have been mentioned, and Admiral Zumwalt. And we gradually saw the Boeing/Kawasaki Jetfoils becoming more popular in the ferry world, and the Rodriguez declining a bit. For some reason, the Rodriguez decline was blamed on excessive fuel costs, which I still can't understand, because obviously Jetfoils use far more fuel than the PT 150s and so on. Nevertheless, the Jetfoils are quicker, generally smoother, and the investment of Boeing in the Pegasus and the other FMBs had to be recovered in some way. So I think they passed it on to the Jetfoil idea, and it was certainly probably not a commercial success, but it certainly was a ferry riding success, I must say. It was a tragedy to me that the US Navy gave up on the foiling boats, and I gather my predecessor, Zumwalt, felt the same way. I believe it was a silly move, and I think it's interesting that the Chinese now are using fast missile boats apparently quite effectively. So at the same time, and we didn't learn much early on, but news started to dribble out of the Soviet Union, and the Soviets began experimenting in the 50s and developed commercial hydrofoils, 57, and then gradually they started to export them through some of their rather strange export organizations that I had to do with over the years. We had secret meetings with a gang of very heavy Russians with stainless steel teeth sitting at the table from us, which made life very interesting. And they were urging us to buy hydrofoil ferries for Australia, along with Russian trawlers and things. And they were almost offering, you know, if you bought a Meteora, you'd get a Baltica class trawler thrown in with it. All sorts of funny deals were being presented, but the spread wasn't fast. The Greeks picked them up, and obviously Soviet Union countries and places like China and Vietnam picked up a few. But I've since ridden on several of each in Russia, around St. Petersburg, in Greece, in China and Vietnam. And I actually was invited I gather illegally, to visit the Almaz shipyard in St. Petersburg in the early 1990s, just after Russia, or the Soviet Union collapsed and Russia started to open up. That was fascinating. It was essentially a defense yard, so all very secret, guards everywhere, but packets of Marlboro cigarettes seemed to get the guards to turn the other way, and I managed to take a few photographs, and it was very interesting to see the work they were doing, because it varied anywhere from very small hydrofoil, almost water taxis, up to an enormous multi-engined hovercraft, of which I believe they sold a couple to the Greeks. But a fascinating yard, lots of experience with aluminium, but mostly pretty primitive in comparison with the aluminium yards I was used to in Australia particularly, and the Darman yards. So we moved on from the Russians, and various other groups whetted my appetite and built interesting craft, one of which was built in 1995 in Fiji, called the Drodrolagi, which I gather is some kind of very traditional Fijian name. It was a catamaran, as I understand it, with a kind of crossbeam foil connecting the bottoms of the two hulls. It got up reportedly to 37 knots, and then it disappeared without trace. I have no idea what happened about it. I've asked around. I have heard nothing about the boat. I can only assume it was a commercial failure and was presumably converted into a non-foiling vessel. And about the same time, in the mid-90s, I started to hear of Professor Hoppe's Haisu cats, and Rodriguez started to promote their monostab idea, and I'd kind of call them hydrofoil-assisted craft. They didn't really leave the water, but they lifted high and reduced their resistance considerably, and that seemed to work and seemed to be a promising way to go. And while we haven't seen anything more of the monostabs, we certainly have seen the Haisu cat principle spread around quite a bit. Part of that, I think, is thanks to Technicraft Design of New Zealand, who have a number of vessels to their credit, ferries, patrol boats and so on, in both the USA and New Zealand. From all reports, and I must admit I haven't been on one, but from all reports, they do work, and they provide sufficient lift to give you definite speed and fuel consumption improvements. We've seen another couple of similar vessels. 123 Naval Architects, who my son is involved with, have designed a couple of foil-supported tri-hull craft. One was a yacht, and I gather the owners are very happy with it. And another was a ferry that went to Korea, and I haven't been able to find out much about what happened to that. And then, of course, more recently, last year, or this year maybe, Frank Kowalski produced his Thunderchild and its various successors, which seem to be selling and certainly do amazing things. And for essentially a trimaran that is self-righting and with foil assist, its performance is quite phenomenal. And I'm beginning to think that for commercial vessels and probably naval craft, that concept generally is probably the way to go. It's obviously more rugged than an exposed hydrofoil craft, and probably in a lot of ways easier to construct, and much less vulnerable to damage in every respect. So I think we'll see more of that, but I'll mention other things later. And I think there may be some continuation and development of the Jetfoils, and I understand Kawasaki have just built another one, or are just building one, and I must say they are fantastic craft to ride on. I went across the entrance to the Pearl River from Macau to Hong Kong in one of the worst storms I've ever had in that area, people were dying of exposure at the Guangzhou railway station at the time, and the pardon me, the Jetfoil just went serenely through it. Nothing else was operating in that area at the time, and it was quite a pleasant ride, I must say. So those areas, I think, are where we're going to see more and more development in the commercial field, and probably military also. But foils certainly seem to turbocharge them, as I mentioned on the slide. The boats go faster and they use less fuel, which is interesting. And I urge everybody to watch the videos of Frank Kowalski's Thunderchild. It's very, very impressive. And he really tests his boats. Then we get to leisure boats, something else that fascinates me. I'm lucky enough to live on the water here in Sydney, and I look out my window almost every day and see anything from a foiling moth, which is for the non-Australians and non-English, it's an 11-foot dinghy, which used to be a popular club boat years ago. But again, they've been more than turbocharged by foils. They lift out of the water and they go amazingly fast for an 11-footer, and seem to be able to stay on their foils for a long time. I also see foiling windsurfers. They're currently out there training for the Olympic Games. The next Olympics, I believe, is going to have foiling windsurfers, and various small dinghy-type catamarans with foils that are going very fast. And meanwhile, I've been watching the America's Cup boats and the French ocean races, which are very inspiring, dramatic craft, and show us what can be done, particularly with modern FRP foils, which do a lot more than my old wooden ones 50 odd years ago. And I think they're the future. And if they can be adapted to commercial craft, perhaps by having retractable foils, as they are on the America's Cup and the ocean racing boats in many cases, I think there's probably something that can transfer from leisure boats to commercial and military, and I believe that will come fairly soon. And with new metals, as was mentioned earlier, and I've just heard of a new form of aluminium that has 25 times the fatigue resistance of traditional marine aluminium. It was announced about 2 days ago in Melbourne. But anyway, the fact of the strength being there in foils is very promising. And it's very interesting to watch the moths and windsurfers in that they sail mostly upright. They manage to do that despite their enormous speeds. And they are gradually becoming easier to handle. The first America's Cup boats were very, very tricky, but I believe now they're much easier to handle. And I watch them with great interest almost every day. The other interesting area, which has also been previously mentioned, is electric water jets, which are being used on, as you can see, a surfboard, and I see them flashing across my cove, and the Sea Bubbles water taxi, which is in the left-hand picture. I think they're all getting it, and I think all of this is going to come across ultimately as people learn about the use of the new materials, which are just incomprehensibly stronger and lighter than the sort of stuff we played with 50 years ago. And that's where I think the progress has come most dramatically. And I guess most of that's happened in the past 15, 20 years. And I see that melding into commercial and military craft over the next few years. And that whole prospect fascinates me and excites me. And I think one way or another, either between the Haisu type foils or retractable sailing type foils, we're going to see some amazing developments over the next few years. And the future, as you can see, I'm very, very enthusiastic about the future of foiling. And I'm confident that that transfer of technology is already occurring. That's obvious. I think it will move much more quickly over the next couple of years. And I expect to see some really important breakthroughs in the next year or the next few years. And I think it's very, very important that the International Hydrofoils Society keeps promoting and pushing and providing a melting pot of ideas, because it's the guys like you who've been involved for forever, basically, who have kept it from falling in a heap in a corner somewhere, which it looked like doing, the whole concept of hydrofoils. And I think the work you've been doing is extremely valuable for the whole maritime world, not just the hydrofoil sector of it. And I believe that's going to make a big difference. And I hope we're here long enough to see the big breakthroughs that I expect. And I wish I could be here for the 75th anniversary conference, because I think it'll be dramatically different from this one and even more exciting. So on that note, I wish the IHS well for its conference and the oncoming celebration, and look forward to following your deliberations and learning of many further advances in foiling, and hope I'll have plenty to put in my magazines, or my online magazine now, and perhaps we might even be able to organise a foiling exhibition sometime. But all of that is incredibly exciting, and I think you're all on the right track. So good luck, and my best wishes for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. That was excellent, an excellent overview of things from your point of view, which is a very broad and long-lived one. I can say for myself and many others that we have valued your publication. In fact, your daily newsletters are a major source of information for us now on maritime developments. Who would like to ask a question? Who's first? Okay, Ray.
Neil, can you tell us more about the new aluminum? Is it totally more advantageous? It's going to be more expensive, of course, but
presumably more expensive. I don't know any of the technical details. I've received a press release from Monash University, and I could flick that to Martin Grimm, and he may be able to pass it on to everybody. That might be the best bet.
Yeah, good. And while I've got the this position, Phil, would you ask each of the audience where they're from? I've written down everybody's name, and I'd like to know. I think we've really got an international group today, which is very exciting. Could you please do that?
Sure. Let's start. Takeo from Kawasaki.
Yes.
Richard Steed, you're muted.
Richard is from from San Diego.
Right, San Diego.
Bob Gerttula.
I'm from Seattle area, worked on the Tucumcari. 20 years later, finished up on the PHMs.
Paul Bieker, we will introduce shortly, so you don't have to say anything at the moment. Mark Bebar.
Yeah, Mark Bebar, live in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I was fortunate early in my career with the Navy Department in the U.S. here to work on hydrofoil studies prior to PHM, and then be involved with the PHM program and the fellowship specification development. We had a big Navy team that worked with Boeing. It was really a great project to be involved with so early in my career. So got to ride on PHM-1 in a drag race with one of the Jetfoils in Elliott Bay in Seattle, which is pretty exciting. So, and I'm really enjoying being involved with the Hydrofoil Society.
Martinn Mandles.
Los Angeles.
Excuse me, can I interrupt? I'm Kai from Japan, and Just now you can see a Jetfoil departure from Tokyo terminal.
Oh, yes.
Oh yes, yeah. That's a Jetfoil will go into Japan is remote island.
Oh, that's fantastic timing.
Yeah.
Neil, could you stop the sharing the screen? I think Kai-san can show a biggest view.
How?
If Neil stopped it, if everybody change to speaker's view, then and Kai-san speak something, then
Yeah.
bigger view.
So can you see
Yes.
just before bridge?
Yes, yes.
Yep, got it.
Kai-san, what ship is in service now?
That is Seven Island Tomo
Tomo is
by Tokai Kisen.
okay. So it is a I think second ship we Kawasaki built. It's not a Boeing built. It's Kawasaki built ship of how old? 25 years old or something.
Tom Speer?
Yes, I'm from Port Gamble, Washington. So just the other side of Puget Sound from Seattle.
Okay. Everyone else seems to be muted. If you can unmute yourself. Mike Bosworth.
Hello, I'm Mike Bosworth, and I am in Vienna, Virginia, near Washington, D.C., and been involved on and off with hydrofoils for half a century, starting out as a teenager in my backyard and a 16-footer, and also with John Meyer at Carter Rock Laboratory when I was a young officer. And now I am the director for the Center for Innovation and Ship Design at the Carter Rock Laboratory.
Martin Grimm?
Yeah, hi everyone. Martin Grimm from Canberra, Australia. I'm a Hydrofoil Society member for many years and a hydrofoil enthusiast, obviously. And welcome to some names that I recognise, including from Japan. So good morning.
Tony Chang?
I work with small boats as a shipyard estimator for 7 years, and I am supporting Carter Rock near Washington, D.C. for the last 10 years.
And Devin Palmer?
I'm a University of Michigan student in Ann Arbor.
In naval architecture?
Aerospace engineering, actually.
Oh, good. Logan?
Hi, yeah, my name is Logan Galindo. I'm also a U of M student in the name department, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to meet you all.
Everyone else here is muted at the moment.
We've got some more. Maybe they've left. Ranja and Tony, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Who was, if I may ask, who was the gent that worked on Tucum Carry program from Boeing?
That was me, Bob Gerttula. Tucum Carry program.
All right. I was the second skipper on Tucum Carry. The man that was my predecessor is just below you on the grid here, Mr. Mandles. I'm sure you know him.
Yes.
My guy that held my hand for 33 months was Emmett Swank. It's a man that I dearly missed and dearly loved. I really enjoyed his company off and on for my 33 months. He was a great help to me.
Were you on the Tucum Carry when it traveled to Europe and made the demonstration?
Yes, I was.
We met it in La Spezia. I was working on the Italian hydrofoils at that time.
Okay. That 6-month cruise, I have more faces in my memory bank than I can recall. It was just unbelievable. 6 months worth of, I had a calloused hand with all the handshakes.
I recall the visit to La Spezia.
La Spezia, yeah, that's where we had our change of command when I left.
Mm-hmm.
But I apologize for not recognizing the name and the face. But then again, it's been a little over 50 years.
Very good.
At this point, has anyone thought of another question or comment for Neil Baird?
I was just going to add, Bob, that so many of the ex-Boeing hydrofoil people are in the Federal Witness Protection Program. That you don't have to apologize for us not recognizing your name or face. It was very kind, I thought, of Dick Steed to mention his Boeing hero and mine, for those of you who were involved with the the Fresh One program, the PHM, the PGM, PGH. Mine was Vern Salisbury. I met Vern while we were both in the flight test department at Boeing, and he became the pilot, and I was the first co-pilot of Fresh One. That's the test hydrofoil, the fully ventilated foils, the ones that could go 80 knots, and he did, but when he did, you may recall that it flipped, and that was 3 months after I'd returned to Stanford to complete my mechanical engineering degree. So the fellow in the co-pilot seat was a different guy. I'm not sure what his name was, but in any event, there were no injuries. The boat was badly damaged, but quickly repaired. However, it never got in the water again. So I started out flying airplanes and racing hydroplanes as a kid in Tacoma, Washington, for those of you who are Washington State folks like Tom Speer. And then I went to Boeing after my junior year at Stanford and was the first co-pilot of the Aquajet, if you remember the HTS. That was the first jet-powered unlimited hydroplane. Never raced, but it was the right boat and a remarkable experience. And was used for testing foils. We built it, or Boeing built it, so that we wouldn't have to pay the outrageous price of going to the David Taylor Model Basin in Maryland or Trondheim, Norway. I missed a trip to Norway because Boeing was saving money. And then when Fresh One came along, a wonderful fellow, the late Bruce Bryant, took over as pilot or co-pilot of HTS, and I moved on to Fresh One. And then after a couple of years in military service overseas, Vietnam, I was brought back to be the first captain, as Richard Steed was kind enough to say, of Tucumcari, and was aboard Tucumcari, Dick, I think for about a year before I had the good fortune of being relieved by Dick Steed, who almost immediately got the boat into a overhaul, or whatever it was called, to fix it up. And then he was off to Vietnam, and then upon his return from Vietnam was off to Virginia Beach on the East Coast, and then off to Europe and Scandinavia for a great adventure. So
It's really good history, Martin. I'm glad that you mentioned it, and it's nice to have Dick Steed here at the same time to hear that. I'd like to go back though. Bill, more opportunity. Anybody who'd like to comment on Neil's presentation?
I thought it was terrific, by the way, if I could just add that.
Yeah.
Can we get the rest of these people off their frozen mics?
I can't unmute them, I don't think.
You can invite them to unmute them.
Okay.
I think you do that by going to participants, and you'll get a list, and then you have more, and then the menu drops down and invite them to unmute.
Come on, Lenny, don't be so shy.
I have a quick question.
Yes, go for it.
I'm pretty new to all this, and I saw mention that like multi-hull craft were preferred to a monohull, and I was curious why. Is that just for the stability advantages, or is there more to it than that?
Oh, I'd like to plug up on that one if I can, Devon. We've actually got presentations throughout the next couple of weeks from Kai at Kawasaki and his colleagues on the Boeing Jetfoil and now the Kawasaki Jetfoil. We've got Gunter Hoppe talking about foil-supported catamarans. We've got the Russians talking, or I should say the Alexeyev Design Bureau, talking about monohull hydrofoils. I do think it's very much different concepts for even the hydrofoil subset have got different advantages. Catamaran hulls, foil support, for instance, have a very nice deck area that you can easily lay out a passenger cabin in. But that said, the Kawasaki Jetfoil has a twin deck passenger cabin, has amazing foil-borne ride with its fully submerged foils, and is still a monohull design fundamentally. So I think there's no simple answer, but I'm still very much an advocate of monohull hydrofoils if designed well. And history has shown that the Jetfoil worked well in commercial service, as did all the Suprama and Rodriguez and Alexeyev hydrofoils over the years. So that's my view on it.
Could I just add in there?
I think, Neil, you should be the one responding to these questions.
Yeah, well, basically, I think Martin hit the nail on the head by saying if it's well designed, it doesn't really matter whether it's a monohull or a multi-hull. Well designed is the important thing, and particularly in military and commercial use, and fundamentally it has to be safe. I think the big advantage of multi-hulls is in the area of foil-assisted, of a Hysucat type, where you can link the keels of the 2 or 3 hulls with a foil, which is fairly well protected by themselves, and also it's a shorter foil, a smaller foil, so there's fewer structural problems. I think that's probably the way to go up to medium speeds, but if you want to go to really high speeds, you're almost certainly going to have leisure yacht type hydrofoils, but probably retractable. And in that case, it wouldn't really matter whether it's a monohull or a multi-hull. Although, funnily enough, from a safety point of view, and I've studied this intensively over the last few years, multi-hulls are immeasurably safer in the long run in the extreme situation of hitting something than monohulls.
I might add one thing, if I may, that catamarans really don't bank into turns, they do flat turns. And the concept with the single hull, like the Tucumcari, for example, rolls into the turn. It's more like an airplane. But the
yeah, well, that's a matter of operations.